Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I want to begin this contribution by taking us all back to 1998. This may or may not be a pleasant memory for everybody in the House. 1998 was an interesting year, but during that year, in fact on the 14th of May 1998, this House was debating the second reading of the Social Security Amendment Bill, which, as best I can tell, is the piece of legislation that is at the root of the problem we've got today. There are a large number of things I could raise about the debate that night. One of them involves an honourable member by the name of Trevor Mallard, who raised a number of points of order during that particular debate, including an exchange with Joy McLaughlin, which involved a number of withdrawal and apologies, some of which I could refer to. If I used some of the language, I'd probably...
I'm now going to ask the member to
be made to bring that back. But should at a later date in the evening you wish to hear that, Mr Chair, do let me know. But I want to refer to a speech that was given during the debate by a Labour Party member, Steve Mahari. And I want to highlight three things that he said that are relevant to the reason that we are here tonight. The first of those is that early on in his contribution, he made the point that the Minister of Social Welfare had given the legislation that was being debated to the opposition that morning. That was the amount of notice it got. Is this ringing any bells for anybody? The reason we are here tonight, with the government deciding to retrospectively take away the rights of a group of New Zealanders, has its roots in the same rushed, hopeless pace of legislation that this government once again puts us through. And Mr Mahari was very prescient, as he occasionally was. He said, yet again we have an example of this government running along behind itself, trying to get legislation together and trying to get a program together. When we look through this bill, we see yet again that there are many issues to be cleared up and cleaned up, leaving hundreds of thousands of beneficiaries wondering what exactly it means for them. 1998, fast forward to 2015, and the same thing's been done all over again, Mr Chair, and that is the problem this side of the House has. Mr Mahari then went on to say, this bill is being dealt with under urgency. It will not go to a select committee. And he went on to tell us the problems with that. Once again, Mr Chair, we're in this House tonight debating a bill that has not been to a select committee. We've had as parliamentarians, we've had our right to actually see the evidence that has gone already to a select committee about this matter, denied to us tonight by the National Party. But again, the problems are...
Order. The member will resume his seat. I want to make absolutely clear that no member has been denied the right to see that evidence. Okay. There was a right to table it.
That's correct.
Was not allowed. Members can share evidence with other members. There is no restriction on that. Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and I'll take up that offer in due course. Mr Chair, so we have the problem here, just to repeat how we've got to this point. A piece of legislation not thought through properly, a piece of legislation being pushed through under urgency in 1998, and here we are again correcting, or the government is attempting to retrospectively correct that with another piece of legislation not adequately looked at, no regulatory impact statement, and again being pushed through under urgency. And then there's this line from Mr Mahari. The government wants to see beneficiaries be the fall guy for its faults. Well, Mr Chair, you could not get a better example of history repeating itself from 1998. What I want to know from the government, and I still haven't heard a satisfactory answer from an earlier call where I asked this question. We've now been given an idea of the number of people who've put an application, $8,500. What I want to know from the government... 8,500 people, sorry, thank you. What I want to know from the government is what amounts of money are we talking about here? Are we talking about $80 each for those people? Are we talking $1,000 each? Can we actually get some information into this House about what it is that the government is so concerned about here? Is it the cost? Just be upfront with New Zealanders, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Grant Roberts.
Just be upfront with New Zealanders and tell us tonight what are the sums of money at play here. I would be actually extremely surprised if we were talking about individuals with $5,000 or $10,000. We don't know. But Mr. Chair, I don't know the answer to that question right now. The government must have some idea. The government must be able to do this. Otherwise, what we sit here with is members of the government simply not prepared to get up and justify this legislation. Because I'm really struggling here, Mr. Speaker. You heard from Chris Hipkins earlier talking about what this Parliament has effectively decided is the way in which retrospective legislation can work in this House. And there will be, from time to time, occasions where retrospective legislation makes some sense. But how can a piece of legislation be retrospective for people after an error is discovered, but not before the error was discovered? The error exists. The error has been there, according to the government, since 1998. It's not a matter of finding a dividing line of when a government official told a minister, and that happens to be in 2014, which means there's a limited scope to the number of people who can be involved. If it's an error, it was an error made in 1998, and the government should simply front up to that. But what we learn, Mr. Chair, is that history repeats itself. That history repeats itself because the government tries to ram through legislation and makes mistakes and creates further errors and further inequities, Mr. Chair. So what I want to hear from a government member, from the Minister and the Chair, is some indication of what are the individual amounts of money that are being discussed here. This would normally have emerged during the Select Committee process. It's a dead set guarantee that somehow someone in the Select Committee process would have said, this is how much it is. This is the estimation. This is how many people who've come forward to us today and asked for an amount of money. Because otherwise we're flying blind here, Mr. Chair. And all we're left with is the impression of a government that is determined to take away from a group of New Zealanders the rights that they should have. There is nothing that we have been put forward in this Parliament. There's nothing that would give justification for that. The intention of the Cabinet, the intention of an individual minister, we've got the names of them here. Should we go upstairs and find Peter McArdle and ask him? Ask him what his intention was when he moved this. It's irrelevant, Mr. Chair. It's absolutely irrelevant. It's irrelevant what the Cabinet decided. What matters is what ended up in the law in 1998. That's the only thing that should matter to this Parliament. Because if we spend all of our time trying to work out what the intent of ministers like Peter McArdle and Roger Sowry was, who are the ministers who moved it, we could have any old thing come up. We haven't seen Cabinet papers to justify that. All we've got, Mr. Chair, is the law. And it's our job in this Parliament to make the law, and then when there are mistakes, to deal with that in a way that is fair and is equitable for New Zealanders. Not to deal with it in a way that is convenient for the government. Because that's the impression I've got from this debate, is that what we're doing here in the House is what is convenient for this government. Let's all own this as parliamentarians. A mistake has been made. A group of people have been denied something that they should have got. Individuals in our community. Let's give them the time, all of them, to make an application to get their funding back. They won't all do it. Lots of people will decide it's not worth their while. But that shouldn't be the criteria either. The criteria should simply be when Parliament gets something wrong, it corrects it, and it allows those people who've been aggrieved and who have felt that they have lost their rights or their entitlements to be able to take the course of action that should be available to them. There is nothing that has been put forward to this House tonight that should justify overriding Parliament doing the right thing. And Mr. Chair, I want to hear a National Party member get on their feet and give us a reason for this breach of the rights and entitlements of New Zealanders, because without it, and unless they're prepared to support our SOP, we cannot support the bill.